Caroline, the DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable, and I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's transparency.
Follow up on that,
Sure.
Caroline. Okay, so the FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. According to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network, on Fox News.
I've got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars. They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime and locking up violent criminals has led to the arrest of 14,000 violent criminals. That's a 62% increase from the same time period last year. So this Attorney General and the FBI Director are committed to putting bad people behind bars where they belong. They promised an exhaustive review. That's what they did. For any further details, I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
Thanks, Caroline.
It would be safe to say that the news this week about the Epstein files has caused shock around the world. All you have to do is do a search online and you see that it's what everybody's talking about this week. For years, we have heard about the Epstein client list. We have heard many statements in these first months of the Trump administration that the list would be revealed. Everything would be exposed. In a video that was posted on X by Freethinker Fitness, September 3, 2024, Donald Trump makes the claim that he never flew on any of Jeffrey Epstein's flights to his private island.
There's a moment where you had some hesitation about Epstein, releasing some of the documents on Epstein. Why the hesitation?
I don't think I mean, I'm not involved. I never went to his island, fortunately. But a lot of people did.
Why do you think so many smart, powerful people allowed him to get so close?
He was a good salesman. He was, was a hale and hearty type of guy. He had some nice assets that he'd throw around, like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. They do that for danger, too, because, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
That's great to hear.
But 2021 flight logs indicated that Donald Trump had been on 7 flights, as referenced in a Times of Israel article in November of 2024. NBC video shows Donald Trump in 1992 with Epstein at a Mar-a-Lago party. This was 10 years before the Florida plea deal.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would.
I also came across a Piers Morgan interview with Alina Habba. This was dated in February, and at that time she was a counselor to Donald Trump. And listen to her statements about the Epstein client list.
Jeffrey Epstein files, we're told, are to be imminently unleashed. And already we saw the Attorney General Pam Bondi say that the scale of what happened is far worse than anyone realized. Well over 200, maybe 250 victims, and that we're going to get information either later today or tomorrow from these files. What can you tell me about that?
I believe it will be today. I was just I saw Pam and Cash in the White House just before coming on your show. And I can tell you that I haven't been privy to it yet, but I know it is coming out. They will be taking portions of it. We have to be patient. And I said this last night at a dinner with some media. And I said, I think America needs to remember one thing. We are going to be promises made, promises kept. But when you're dealing with victims. And by the way, this is a perfect example of a case that was vetted, that went through trial, that had testimony, and was prosecuted the right way. I don't preemptively attack. That's just not the way I operate. But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway, we don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
And we know that only one person so far has actually gone to prison over that whole scandal. It was Ghislaine Maxwell, the former lover of Jeffrey Epstein. No man so far has actually been put in prison as a result of what happened. Do you think by releasing information from these files, we are likely to see criminal actions being taken?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think it would be negligent for us not to. You have to hold individuals who are indeed rapists accountable. We have to have them tried, in my opinion. And I do believe in that. You know, nobody should be just dismissed. You have to have your time in court and your case will be heard. But to hide lists, to protect political friends, all of that, we don't have time for that.
So now we were told that there's no evidence whatsoever of any client list. What was Ghislaine Maxwell's trial in prison about then? Why did she end up 20 years in prison? September 2024. The trafficking conviction was upheld by U.S. Appeals Court. Listen to Carolyn Levitt's statement 2 months ago in relation to the client list.
Rogan, go ahead.
Hi, Caroline.
Good to see you again.
Great to see you as well. Great job this morning, and as always, you're really crushing it. My question is about the Epstein files. And a couple months ago, the DOJ released what they called phase 1 of the Epstein files, and they announced that a lot of those files, the remaining files, probably the bulk of the files, were actually in the New York field office. They requested that they be returned the day after, and some legacy media reports show that not only were those files returned to the DOJ, but that hundreds of FBI agents are going through them day after day and getting them ready for public release. Do you have any updates from the DOJ or the FBI on when those files are expected to be released, and also when we might start seeing some arrests of the client list?
Sure. I can assure you that the Attorney General and her team at the Department of Justice are working on this diligently. For a specific timeline, I'd have to check in with them, and we can certainly do that for you, Rogan, in the effort of transparency. But I will tell you, The Attorney General is a bulldog. She is someone you want on your team. And when she wants to get something done, she gets it done. I've seen her do it in various instances already in her time as Attorney General. And when she makes a promise, she keeps it. So I think I don't have a specific timeline on you for that, but I do know that they're working on it over there.
So we are to believe now that all the women who came forward were only victimized by Epstein. And so we're now assuming then that there's going to be a new trial coming up with this new information, or maybe even a pardon from Donald Trump of Ghislaine Maxwell.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure. If I
Pam, could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
You know, I saw your appearance at CPAC with Ben and with Ted Cruz, and one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
My whole point for this study is this, that the tactics of the world are being used by many independent fundamental Baptist pastors and churches. 1 Corinthians 5 verses 9 and following says, I wrote unto you in an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must ye needs go out of the world. But now I have written unto you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, with such an one know not to eat. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? So those that are without the church. To be honest with you, I'm no longer shocked by all of this stuff. What have I to do to judge them also that are without? If the government judicial system does not care for those things, then God will judge. Do not ye judge them that are within. He's emphasizing, as far as to this church, we're to deal with those things within the church. Verse 13, but them that are without, God judgeth. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person. I also want to emphasize Ephesians chapter 4 And there's one verse in particular that came to my mind in relation to what this world does to cover up the wickedness for their friends. So the question I have for us to consider is, why are these same tactics used in so-called King James Bible-preaching churches? This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart. That's what the world's going to do. Who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. All the things that we've learned in these last years related to the Epstein files, the world is wicked. They've given themselves over unto lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. And they even say there's supposedly that there was blackmail in relation to these trips to Epstein's island. Verse 20 is what I want to emphasize. But ye, talking to believers here, have not so learned Christ. So why are we using the same cover-up tactics in churches today? If so be that ye have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus. That ye put off concerning the former conversation, the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. And that ye put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. The question I'm asking is this: why would IFB pastors who claim to believe in Jesus Christ use the same wicked cover-ups and tactics as this world? I understand it's on a smaller scale. I understand the Epstein situation was an international scandal. I understand that there were multitudes of people involved. That's not the point. The point I'm making is this: why are we even considering using the same tactics as our world? We have been given to us this week an in-your-face type of cover-up situation. I'm convinced of that as I've seen the evidence. But ye have not so learned Christ. So we have what I sometimes refer to as the IFB ministry shuffle. I'll give you an example of David Hiles' famous situation. He was exposed at First Baptist Church, Hammond, Indiana, for his immoral behavior. Dr. Hiles arranged for his son, David, to pastor the church in Texas, Miller Road Baptist Church in Garland, Texas, where he had pastored before he was pastor at First Baptist Church in Hammond, Indiana. Adultery at Miller Road Baptist Church in Garland, Texas, involving Pastor David Hiles, was brought forward. So the same things, where he was just shuffled off to another church, the same types of things took place in a second church. Fast forward, David Hiles ended up in Tennessee with Pastor Dave Baker. According to the records I've seen, Dave Baker was a personal security detail for Dr. Jack Hiles. But on September 11, 2024, he committed suicide after being charged with aggravated sexual battery of a minor family member. Here's my point. That is a tragic thing for his family. Years ago, I met Dave Baker on a couple of occasions as he visited the church where we were on staff. I've seen his family, 11 children if I remember correctly. So now we have this cover-up culture that provides the opportunity for predators to prey on people. David Hiles has never repented of these wicked things. In fact, it was exposed that he was continuing an anonymous type of relationship with people by way of text and so on. Another name that I've come across over the years, Mike Zachary. North Valley Baptist Church, Santa Clara, California, Pastor Jack Trieber, Golden State Baptist College. And then he ended up at Lancaster Baptist Church with Pastor Paul Chappell, West Coast Baptist College. Then Mike Zachary ended up at Lighthouse Baptist Church, San Diego, with Pastor Doug Fisher. Eventually he ended up moving to Florida, and I'm not on purpose trying to keep track of Mike Zachary. I'm not sure where he is currently. but he was known for preying on boys. So why is it that we are just shuffling these men from ministry to ministry as a part of the cover-up? Jeremiah 2:19 says that God has built consequences into sin. Jeremiah 2:19 says, "Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backsliding shall reprove thee. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter, that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee, saith the Lord God of hosts." Why do we see so many of these scandals? Why do we see so many of these cover-ups? It's because there is no fear of God in these men. Psalm 94:16, "Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity?" I think also of Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. "Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction." Now, the word dumb there speaks of those who are unable to defend themselves, unable to speak up for themselves. "Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction." You think about our politicians, but I also think of IFB pastors who are doing the same things. They're opening their mouth to protect the predators. Verse 9, "Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy." Let me just say that I believe in this Epstein situation, the tragedy about how the Trump administration is now covering up and handling the Epstein files is the injustice that it brings to those who have come forward. I believe we need to open our mouth for the cause of the victims. Instead, what we see in the IFB is some open their mouth for the predators. I have an example I want to give that I believe very clearly explains what I'm talking about in this matter. I was reminded here recently of the case of Pastor Matt Jarrell in 2011. At that time, he was pastor of Open Door Baptist Church in Mesquite, Texas. Let me give you a little bit of background as far as Open Door Baptist Church on the public record. At least 4 people in 50 years of that church were accused of sexual abuse. At one point, the pastor, before Pastor Jarrell, the pastor failed to report abuse, including a father and son who was a part of the youth and bus ministries. That's Open Door Baptist Church in Mesquite, Texas. Pastor Matt Jarrell was traveling to a preaching meeting in Pennsylvania in 2011. He stopped at a bar in West Virginia. He offered to give a woman a ride home. Instead of taking this woman home, he raped her. She escaped and called the police. The police arrested Pastor Matt Jarrell. He denied the charge at first, and he ends up committing suicide in jail. What's also very interesting is that he had a history of sexual assault arrests before this case. So when this was announced to the church, the youth pastor announced what happened, and then he added this statement: "All of us at our best are sinners." Think about that statement in light of what Pastor Matt Jarrell, their pastor, did when they thought he was traveling to a preacher's meeting in Pennsylvania. All of us at our best are sinners. Yes, but I want you to understand a difference in relation to that situation. Not all of us are criminals. Why is it that we so often group criminal behavior in with sin? Within the context of that, I mentioned evangelist Dennis Corll a few weeks ago in one of my messages. I used to have several of his books until I learned about his response to Matt Jarrell's death. Another IFB evangelist brought this statement to my attention. This is what Dennis Corll said in response to the news of Matt Jarrell committing suicide. "Goodbye, old friend. See you on the other side." Then he says, "My heart is heavy today in the loss of a dear friend, Pastor Matt Jarrell. There's a lot of unsolved mystery concerning the last few days of his life. Rather than try to solve mysteries, let me mention what I know to be facts. He was a preacher whose messages were greatly used of God to encourage, challenge, and inspire folks to serve the Lord and keep on keeping on, even when times are tough. He loved his wife and children dearly and spoke almost nonstop about them when we were together. He was one of the most generous and compassionate men that I have ever known and went the extra mile to be a blessing to me as well as many other people more times than I can count. He had a tremendous burden for church planting and was actively involved in the establishment of several local churches. Every place that he served, he built something rather than tearing something down. He labored to win souls to salvage marriages. Think about that. To salvage marriages. To recover backsliders. To grow new converts to maturity. To build a great work with high standards. High standards. Why did he even go into the bar? And he took a very strong stand against sin and corruption at every level of society, including government. Except for his own personal life, let me add. Everything I have seen and known to be true only elevate my respect and deepened my friendship with him. I, along with many others, will miss his friendship and fellowship, and the cause of Christ will feel the impact of his absence. Please join me in prayer for his precious family, which includes his wife and 4 children, all of whom I know well and love dearly. They're a godly, close-knit family. Please also pray for his parents and other family members who will feel his loss keenly. Here's my point. That is a tragedy for his family. In every one of these situations, it's a tragedy. It's also a tragedy for the victim and their families. Even the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom covered the story of Matt Jarrell. I think also during the trial of Jack Scott, former pastor of First Baptist Church, Hammond, Indiana. People all over America wrote letters to the judge for his trial, telling the judge all the great things he had done in churches and for the cause of Christ. It's very interesting, as I've gone to the website, First Baptist Church in Hammond, Indiana, there's no pastor listed for the years 2001 to 2012, unlike all of the other time periods in the history of the church. Only Jack Scott's accomplishments are listed. No name is mentioned. Again, Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. Open thy mouth for the dumb, for those who are not able to defend themselves, in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. I wonder how many victims' lives in the independent fundamental Baptist cover-up culture, how many victims' lives have been destroyed because we have protected predators. Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. As I've said, I am no longer shocked by the things that our wicked government will do to cover up wickedness. I'm no longer shocked by that. What sickens me even more than the news that we heard this week is how many times independent, fundamental Baptist churches will use the same tactics. Paul again said, "You've not so learned Christ."